So I am 22 years old. I don't have much knowledge about finances and stuff as I still live at home as I'm at university. I do however pay my parents about £300 a month rent, I pay my own phone plan, buy material stuff I want or need, pay out for other services like for music or whatever, and try to put as much as I can in savings whilst still keeping enough in my main account for day-to-day purchases. Currently, I am saving up for driving lessons and hope that if I pass decently, I can use some of my savings towards getting a car. I'm in my final year of uni, so I'll be done and able to work full-time when all this happens. I also decided to get a credit card so I can learn how to manage credit wisely and build some up. My credit score is good for someone of my age and circumstance, but obviously it's nothing great in comparison for other stuff. I should point out that at most I only plan on using this card with a total adding up to £100. I've stuck to that so far and only actually used it twice, with these purchases only adding up to £80, and I paid it off quickly. I do not plan on exceeding my limit anytime soon, as I've heard far too many horror stories of people just using their credit card too much cause it was handy and getting into debt. The only people I disclose this to was my dad, as my mom has the tendency to blab to my brother and sister-in-law, both 28. She happened to overhear us talking one day, and before I knew it, my brother and sister-in-law got wind and asked me if they could use it. They both admitted they had debt spurred on by excessive credit card use and thought that since I basically had nothing owed on mine, it was free money. I told them quite politely that I was really uncomfortable with that idea and that I would owe the money and I can't magic up that kind of money. Things went quiet until a few days later they both turned up at the house. They were nice to start with, but basically started demanding I let them use the card, and they tried to manipulate my mother into guilting me into doing it. I got really angry, and when my brother said I owe it to them because they used to babysit me up until a couple of years ago, I laughed in their faces and walked out. When I came home, I learned they tried to manipulate my dad and he kicked them both out. My mother then tried and he told her to go too, and she is currently staying with my brother and Sil. The only person on my side is my dad, who tells me they're all trying to take me for a ride and they're trying to manipulate me cause I'm young and they think I'm vulnerable. My brother, sister-in-law and mom on the other hand think it isn't a big deal letting someone else use my card. It's really messing with my head, and I just want everyone to stop being in an argument. Son is in 4th grade. School is only open on Mondays. The rest of the week he is home with me. They don't do virtual learning during the rest of the week. No Zoom calls are made. No teacher actually checks in. Homework at home is not to be sent back to the school, and instead they get a participation grade the following week if they tell their teacher they completed it. It's backwards, and your students aren't being graded for the work they actually do. Every Monday we get a new flyer in the mail asking for donations. Last week we got a flyer that said to send out 20 emails to individuals to ask them for donations, with the promise of prizes for participation. They also had other prizes on this flyer. Basically, the more people who donate using your name, the bigger the prize you get. My son wanted the headphones prize. Nowhere on the flyer did it say how many donations was needed. I called the school to ask and they said 12. I sent out the 20 emails. 14 people donated. The donation list was to be emailed to the school with the student ID, and we were to pick up the prizes this past Monday. Son was losing his mind excited because he got the 12 donations needed for the headphones. We walk in and they proceed to tell me and my son that he did not qualify for the prize because in order to be eligible, you needed to get those 20 donations. Apparently the prizes for donations started counting after you received the 20. They turned damn near every student away, not just my kid. So I sent the boy out with his father and pulled the teacher and principal aside to let them know that they got these kids' hopes up for absolutely nothing, and that all they accomplished was destroying the children's spirits by lying to their faces. I then told them that I was told by the secretary that he only needed 12 donations for those headphones. They said, "Sorry you feel that way. This is just how things are right now due to COVID." So I responded with, "Oh, so lying to students and breaking their spirits is okay because of COVID? Failing to provide virtual learning for the rest of the week like other schools is okay because of COVID? Asking for donations when the kids are only here once a week must be okay, too, right?" I then walked out. Well, my son got the headphones in the mail today with a note from the superintendent that said, "I'm very sorry for the actions of the school system and the confusion formed around the donation drive. We are trying to work with the families, not turn them away. Please accept this as an apology. My son is over the moon. My husband says that I was being a Karen and that we should have just dropped it because it teaches our son that life isn't fair, and that I now look like an helicopter parent." I am a 33 years old female, and I have had fertility issues for the past couple of years with my husband. He's 35. We went through with consultations, and while we had very promising results for treatment, the cost did give us pause. It wasn't that we couldn't afford it, we just weren't at the point yet where we were willing to pay. I discussed it with my husband and we were both fine with the idea of adopting. My cousin Tiffany, woman 25 years old, is adopted and she supported our choice in looking into it. However, this was a couple of years back, and during that time Tiffany was reunited with her birth parents, and she's been acting pretty hurtful to my aunt and uncle since then. She keeps making posts about how happy she is to know where she comes from and is happy about being reunited with her real family. She even talked about having her birth father walk her down the aisle as a chance to make up for lost time. Obviously, my uncle was very hurt about this, but when he voiced it, Tiffany got defensive. She called my uncle selfish, how this was about her, and that he knew what he signed up for when raising someone else's kid. Before the pandemic, Tiffany moved closer to where her bio mother lived so they could make up for lost time. And Tiffany kept making post after post about all the fun she was having meeting relatives, and how she called / video chatted with each of her bio parents multiple times a week. Meanwhile, she barely texted back my uncle and aunt once a month. I could tell how heartbroken my aunt and uncle were, but tried to give Tiffany her space, and the few times they said anything she accused them of being selfish and unsupportive. I think the biggest thing that broke them was when Tiffany promised to come by for my aunt's birthday and was even given the money to travel to them, but then never showed up. She called literally the day before to say that her bio mom had an emergency so she wasn't going to make it, but didn't give back the money. I am completely disgusted by Tiffany's behavior, and while I haven't completely ruled out adoption entirely, I did want to give medical assisted conception a try. My husband supported this, and we are now currently expecting. After we made our announcement, Tiffany messaged me asking why I would spend thousands on creating a child when I could help one who already existed. I tried to play it off, but Tiffany kept pressing and calling me a bad person when there are so many children who desperately need a home, and overpopulation. It got to the point where she was pissing me off, and I just came clean and said that her behavior towards the people who loved and raised her was the reason. Tiffany got really upset, but I didn't care. However, her parents are now starting to say that I was wrong. My son Simon, he is 16, moved out of the room he used to share with his little brother and got his own room a few months back. Ever since, he's been complaining about his mom barging in without knocking and interrupting his sleep and studying. Sometimes when he's changing. I know that she's his mother, but he says he's got his own room and has a job and is learning to become an independent adult, but doesn't feel like his privacy is being respected even when that's his mom. He says he's not a kid anymore and is entitled to at least get a knock on the door before she comes in. He was getting tired of her not listening to him, so he came to me and said, "Dad, you need to help me set some clear boundaries with Mom." So I spoke to her about her need to knock before entering Simon's room. She was like, "What? And no, we're family, not strangers. Do you really expect me to foolishly knock on the door 5 times a day? That's ridiculous. Also, the knocks doors in their own home?" I told her my family, for instance. She made a face, then went on a rant about how my family hate each other's and the way they treat each other's like they were strangers is shameful. I told her family or strangers, it's about respecting one's privacy. We had an argument about it, and I told her if she wasn't going to stop with the barging and refuse to knock on the door before entering, then our son will get a lock. She did it again at 11 p.m. She barged in when our son was asleep. He jumped up because he got scared. Once he told me this, I told him to go ahead and get a lock and pay for it with his own money. There was literally no other way. My wife saw it and got upset, and my brother was visiting when she was raising her voice at me if I really went ahead and got a lock for Simon despite her disapproval, and said that I caught her off guard and it's not okay. Because this teaches our children that they can manipulate one parent into doing what they want. I told her that Simon got the lock, not me, and I already warned her about the possibility of him getting a lock, because he was getting tired of her boundary crossing. So she should have expected this outcome. She mentioned the same above points in her defense and said locks mean secrets, and that's not good. My brother was sitting watching while she was complaining. She began chewing him out when he asked her to let Simon keep the lock and said it wasn't a big deal. She stopped talking to me and Simon till we removed the lock, but I've no intentions on doing that.